2, 1.
Hi, my name is Lauren Everett, and I want to invite you to join us over the next few weeks as Pastor Dale talks to us about the power of God's presence. Do you know one moment in His presence can take the simple and the ordinary and transform it into life-changing truths that mark us forever? I've had the privilege of knowing Pastor Dale as my father-in-law for almost 15 years now, and I can tell you that his life and his ministry is one of character and integrity. It's been a great joy to see God take him all over the world to preach the good news. If you'd like more information on what Pastor Dale is doing all over the world or discover ways that you can give, you can go to daleeverettministries.org. I'm so excited about this series. Let's dive in.
He's an amazing God, isn't he? And he's doing great things right here today among us because he has no boundaries. Oh, you didn't hear that. He's not great somewhere else. He's great everywhere. Everywhere. You need to believe that and embrace that. The Lord has dropped a word within my heart that I'm just so delighted to share with you today. And let me tell you something about my ministry right now, my ministry today. My son-in-law, who you saw on the video, the heavy-set Hispanic young man there, he asked me a question some time ago. He said to me, Dad, he's a pastor now and preacher, and he said, how long does it take you to prepare one of your messages? And he's listened to so many of the experts today that do the seminars and so on. And some of them will tell you, like, for every minute they preach, they take an hour of study. Yeah. And so he said, well, how long do you take? I said, well, that's changed over the years. In the early days when I was first beginning in ministry, and in June marked the 50th year of this ministry, but in the early days, I said, this is pretty well what it would take for me, all right? And the pastors or speakers here will understand maybe a little better about what I'm going to say. I said, I'm going to take out of the equation the time it took for me to figure out what I was supposed to speak on. All right, sometimes that takes half a week before you even know where you're going. So let's take that out of the equation. And let's also take out of the equation the amount of time it took to come to the text, maybe to pull resources that would help you put that together, or books that you might have that will help you, assist you in bringing the thought forth. If we take that out of the equation, let's bring it right down to the moment where I understand the text I'll be working with. I know where I'm going on this thing. I've got the resources now on the desk before me. Now that's going to take me somewhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours to put that together. I said, that was in my early days, and for a great number of years. I said, today, the messages that you hear me speak, they've taken over 40 years. Because today, I don't speak so much out of my study, although I do study. I speak more out of my journey. I talk to you about the things that he's talked to me about, and what he's walked me through gives me something to say unto you. Today's message was birthed out of a time in my life where I came to a very dry period. I don't know why. I didn't understand it. I was pastoring at that time. I pastored 3 churches, 2 that were existing churches and 1 that I planted, the last one I planted. But it was in my second church that I found myself at a point where all the color had gone out of life. And I didn't understand why. It wasn't like we were having a hard time. People weren't being mean. The church was growing. In fact, in our area, I was a presbyter or a bishop over it with multiple churches under me. And our church, when I came to it, was in financial struggle. They were about to lose their building within 90 days, and instead, we paid it off in 2.5 years. Most people would have looked at that and said, you're on top of the game. But I knew something wasn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Now, if it had been an issue of sin or secret sin, I was keeping my heart open before God, and I can look back at that time now and say that wasn't it, because that can sure dry stuff up on you. You understand, I'm not bragging or trying to make myself look holy. I was trying to figure out what in the world's going on. Why is it that all of the, I don't know, the fun had gone out? Do you understand what I mean by that? I examined my prayer life. Are you not praying anymore? And I could honestly say it wasn't really that. What about the word? Have you deviated from that? Are you just, preaching whatever, stuff instead of getting into the life-giving word? And I couldn't. I looked at it. I said, I was desperate. I was looking. I said, I don't know. It doesn't appear to be that way. What is it? So the only thing I knew to do is what I had been taught from a child. I grew up in a great full gospel church. I grew up in a church of deep prayer. I grew up in a time in which many services, but especially Sunday night services, we would have altar time, and not just with people praying or prophesying over you. We came and waited before the Lord, and honestly, our service would start about 7 o'clock at night, and it was very rare that before I, as a child, would leave the altar before 9 or 10. I learned before I was 9 years of age how to pray 2 consecutive hours before his presence, and I wasn't alone with that. I was in a house of prayer like that. We had a culture of prayer. And when things get tough and I can't figure anything else out, all I know to do is to shut myself in with him. And so I went into a time of fasting and prayer. I was going to take about a week, maybe a little more on that. But while I was in there, he came to me and he kept saying to me, stay with me a little longer. Stay with me a little longer. I didn't intend on it, but it turned out to be 40 days and nights of no solid food going past these lips at all. As I was going through that time period, I wasn't announcing it to the church or anything like that, but you can't hardly stay away from food for 30 days before someone figures it out. You start looking a little different. And so people were asking questions. And when they found out what I was doing, the key question is, what is God saying? What is God saying? Well, he had said several things to me during that time, but every one of them was simplistic. I'm going to tell you something. It's the simple words that God will speak to your heart that will transform you. If you're looking for something that is shrouded in secrecy and is Da Vinci Code-like, you're probably never going to figure it out, because it's the simplicity of the gospel that connects with our heart. And so I would say to them, he said a lot of things, but I don't think they would make any sense to you, so I'd rather not talk about them. And I wasn't trying to say, I'm so spiritual and so above you, you can't figure this out. I just said, it's going to be so simple, you're going to think, huh? And so this went on, and like I said, with 40 days, but about 30 days into it, and my wife included asked me these questions, and my leaders and so on. But I remember it was a Sunday morning service, and I was in my office, which Jan has been in the place where he's ministered with me there, and it was a separate building from where the sanctuary was. It was a large complex that we had there, and so you had to go through the office buildings and then come through a little breezeway and into the what would be the educational wing of the facility, and then on down to what would be about the 600-seat sanctuary. And so I was ready. We were close to service time now, maybe 10 minutes before service, and I'm about to leave my office, and I opened my door, and when I did, and this is no joke, my wife and one of my elders was literally, they had their noses right up to the door. They didn't open it. They were just standing there. So when I opened the door, it was, oh, wow, they're just right there, And my wife said to me, they said, we have decided that you are going to tell us what God is saying to you. I was like, wow. And I said, we're going to service, come on. They said, no. And they talked to me all the way through the office complex, all the way across the breezeway, all the way through the educational building. We're right at where now we would go into the sanctuary. And I said, it's not that God's not saying stuff, but it's so simple. I don't think it'd make any sense to you. And so finally, I forget, it was either her or him, spoke up and said, we don't care, just tell us what he's saying. I said, okay. I said, there's a lot of things he said, but the key thing he said to me that has been the transformation for me is he told me, he said, Dale, all you need is Jesus, and if he's manifest, everything else will come together. Now, I wish you could have seen the look on their face, especially my wife, when I said this is now almost 40 days of no food. And it's like, and so all you need is Jesus. And my wife looked at me and said, my Dale, I could have told you that 30 days ago and saved you the whole deal here. Are you getting it? And that's what I would have told you before that. But something happens when you meet with him and he speaks these things to you. If you would have asked me before that, Dale, do you think there's anything more important than Jesus? I would have looked you in the eye and said, what are you talking about, man? You have no idea, my life and what I believe. Would you ask me a question like that? Of course I understand. It was like that day in the boat when the storm had come up and he was asleep. It looked like the boat's going to sink. And they wake him and they say, Lord, we're perishing. Imagine that. They talk to the God of hope. He's right there. And they said, you know what perishing means? We're dying without any hope. That's what perishing means. I'm dying without. He turned to him, the God of all hope, and they said, we're dying without any hope. They watched him. He's multiplied the loaves and fish. They've been there when he's raised the dead. They've seen him give sight to the blind and cleanse the lepers. Now they tell him we're dying without any hope. He turns and he speaks to the winds and the waves and he said, be peaceful and be calm. And boom, the storm is gone just like that. And then it says, and then they worshiped him, saying, truly, 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 you are the Son of God. But I think if you'd have asked any one of those men before they got in the boat, you think he's the Son of God? They'd have said, are you kidding? You understand who we are? We're his disciples. We walk with him. He teaches us privately. We got the inside scoop. We already know about this. But when you go through the storm and you hear him speak, you stand back there and you go, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. Truly you are the Son of God. I'm going to talk to you for the next few moments of this manifest presence of Christ. Because when I came out of that time, the transformation happened in me because I became a pursuer of the one. That's the only one that's important in life.